Hey, welcome back, folks. It may appear to you as though we've continued to smash more and more of the existing structure out, and you would be right. I was thinking yesterday we would get our floor plate in and we'd just get our walls roughed out and we'd go right along. But the more I take away this wall, which is basically a load-bearing wall, you have the carrying beam in the basement with our two new jack posts underneath that, and to translate that, if that can't do that span without a couple posts underneath it, we certainly can't do this span again for the second floor without bearing somewhere, splitting the bearing on that span over to the left or the right of basically center somewhere. So what's left in here, these couple planks, this guy here and this guy over here, I don't know if you can see it better here, they're in there and they're shoring up vertically the beam that comes through above our heads here. And in addition to that, I just felt more comfortable smashing things out here, and you should do too, with some real structural supports in here. I don't have the ability to press, you want to spread this load out as much as you can. I can be sure, I believe, that these pieces of LVL in their location at least catch two floor joists, and again on the floor here, and again on the floor there. I own plates of steel which spread the steel load out. I've actually pushed so hard on these before that I've pushed this footprint at the end of the shore, that orange square, I've crushed it through and broken it out through the middle of the LVL. So as more insurance, I've almost doubled the surface area with just the addition of the steel plates, which I don't put overhead just because it's just me and there's too many ways in which that could fall, and if it misses me when it lands on the hardwood floor, that's the end of those pieces of hardwood. So we don't put those overhead. But anyway, I could be sure that I've got a couple joists with the spans of the LVL, and I'm under and around here wherever I can get. I have a fourth one. I could be here. Didn't think I needed it because, of course, most of this is staying put the way that it's always been. So as a best practice, we got under it, and I'm glad I did. I've taken more and more of these planks out. Now, normally, if you have a beam and you have a load-bearing wall, it's right on the center line of the beam. The jack posts in the basement are on the center line of the beam, and the bearing wall upstairs is on the center line of the beam, and the carrying beam for the second story is right on the center line of the wall, and on we go. Now, the center line of these walls that are built with a plank like this is right in the center of this plank, and the edges had lath on them, and then the lath had plaster, and that ultimately was the width of your wall. So these are the core of the wall, and it's on their center that this upstairs beam should be. It's not, though. The face of this is coplanar with the face of the beam, so this beam has stood on just, this very edge of this bearing wall. And it may or may not need this. I was sawing along even after I had these posts in. This is a good way to test it. After I had these posts in and I took them up as much as I wanted before I started crushing in, making the print of the LVL in the ceiling itself. I got about that tight. And as I'm cutting through everybody here, I start to get a pinch in my blade, which is telling me that the kerf that I'm leaving from the blade is getting squished down. So we're settling a little bit. So I can be sure that there is still some weight on these. And it's really weird to me that this beam isn't centered over them and this wall wasn't built underneath the center line of it. The floor has been finished to the location of the wall forever, and there's a big missing stripe of hardwood where this wall has lived. So for that and a variety of other reasons, and opening a can of worms, we're not going to move the location of this entire wall. I'd like to leave this whole piece of it over here. What I am going to do, long story short, Chazzy, geez Louise, you can blab and blab. I'm going to replace this. We got away with a 14-foot 2x6 for the sole plate here. I want to extend it, which I can't do now. We're going to replace it. I want to extend it into this wall so that a pair of 2x6s at the end of our new wall come in underneath that beam again, and we just really have something new and far better engine. I wanted to use air quotes for my engineered, but well engineered, certainly compared to this situation here. It makes me feel so much better. So what do we need to gain? I went to the back of the crown molding from this room, and I put a screw, and I pushed the string for the plumb bob tight to the surface of the back of the crown, and I let the plumb bob fall down here after I've picked my location for my sole plate. I should have done this prior. These are how these decisions go. I had to look right at it. And I get my tape in here, and I find out that basically 2 3/4 of an inch is how much longer the sole plate needs to go. Although, of course, I want drywall to go behind the crown molding, so we'll take the 1/2 inch back for the drywall. So 2 1/4 of an inch, so 2 3/4, so 2 1/4. if we extend our sole plate there and we start with a 2x6 and then we do a second just for good measure in the end of the wall, then we'll take our pocket out to move the ducting over with. But to box that out and keep it nice and perfect and tight, we will put a 1/2 inch of plywood, or at least 3/8 of an inch of plywood, maybe even a 1/4 inch of true birch plywood, just to mitigate the thickness and expense, just to box it out and to keep that pair of studs from migrating over this way or in any which way. It's unfortunate that I can't do all of this and then just maintain the sole plate's integrity. We're going to immediately cut it out for the sake of this duct. So we got a bunch of concessions to make here, but I'm just trying to be wise while I'm in here. So using the plumb bob. So we'll move on and we'll know that 2 1/4 inches greater is what we need overall length. I've got hole centers and stuff that I put in here for existing electrical. We'll sneak this 14-inch or 14-foot plate right back outside. We'll lay it alongside the 16-footers that I bought to replace it and the top plate. We'll lay out and add our 2 1/4. We'll cut him, we'll re-drill our holes, we'll bring him back in, and we'll be right back on track here after, yesterday we spent demolishing and thinking about what we want to do. And then normally you plumb up from a sole plate that if you're placing your wall based on the sole plate, you plumb up both sides and then connect up with your top plate, and you have a plumb wall. Vice versa, if you know where you want it on the ceiling, you put your top plate up, you plumb down, and you put your ends on, and then between the two ends, if you just set your sole plate to the flush with the end studs that you've got, now you've got your sole plate in the right position. We are starting with a sole here, and because I don't want to go up and try to get a 16-footer on the ceiling, and you just can't see the ends. If you want to stick it with a screw in the middle and then come back to one end, then this point is wrong, back and forth. So what we'll do as a best practice is we'll take this out, we'll remake it longer, we'll install it correctly. Then on the far end here, we'll stick our end stud flush to the sides of it, and we'll go up the wall and we'll plumb that up, and we'll make it a length that leaves us 1.5 inches to sneak the top plate in on top of it, and we'll stick it to the wall there. And then we'll do just what I said. We'll copy the length of the sole plate in a top plate, we'll stick it onto that little 1.5 inch shelf from down here, and we'll just tap it back and forth to keep it real close to flush, and then we'll carefully come back down and we'll place it here based on a plumb line that we'll put on the wall, and stick it into the ceiling and go back to the other end and stick it. And then the last thing we'll do is get under it to the sole plate with 1, 2, and we'll have the plane of our wall defined here, and we'll have our solid wood bearing underneath that the beam going across. And then I'll probably throw a couple more studs in here and probably build the ductwork from floor to ceiling throughout and get the plywood on it, and then I'll feel comfortable getting rid of the remnants, at least to this side here of this wall and up and over. And I think we'll probably end up taking off and framing this conventionally with 2x4s all the way over to this wall, which we can die into it. So the problem with that is it would get thicker for the sake of using real 2x4, but we come along, if we work to the far side and make this side planer of it on that, and we come out here thicker than the far wall, we can run along and die into the face of our new wall. And then on this, in this room, the narrower wall, you'll never notice it as compared to the other, because of course our new wall's in the way of it. So this, in that way, we'll keep what we've got here for existing construction. We'll rebuild what we've got here just to get something worth putting a door jamb and stuff around over to this is the stairwell right there. So we'll just take off and frame this around here. Also, in doing so, I can go right, like I said, up with a real jack and a king, go right through here with a real header, and right back down with a real jack and a king. And we'll be even more so, we'll be underneath this beam all the way over and in the end of this wall. And then you'll really have all the way from the basement work we did the other day up 2 new jack posts across the existing and leveled carrying beam, up these wooden jack studs, and in the end of this 2x6 wall solidly underneath the second story bearing carrying beam. And geez, the improvement to the structure of this home will be enormous for the cost that is relative to the cost. So, which we like to do for people. And there's a lot of ways to cut corners here and not open the worm cans that we've opened, but I just don't work that way. And I think that's the benefit of, not to make this a sales pitch, but I encourage everybody to be like that, because you'll just never kick yourself for getting things right while you were in there. And of course, we've made room for our new duct in the ceiling here. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned, and we'll see you. And thanks for watching, and we'll see you.